I want to get to this story. I was watching a report on this and thought, every time we talk about a scam or some kind of fraud, it always ends the same way. You'd think by now people would get it or understand. Well, that's flawed thinking, because it turns out people are being scammed out of more and more money every single year. So obviously, the message is not getting through. And I think, to be perfectly honest, I guess, people who are doing this, the fraudsters, are getting much, much better at what they do. So we thought we'd try to help you out on this. Maybe you know someone who's been through something like this. Martina Dove is a researcher specializing in scam psychology. She's also the author of a book called The Psychology of Fraud, Persuasion and Scam Techniques, Understanding What Makes Us Vulnerable, and she is on the line. Thank you so much for being here. Let me begin by asking, because I know there are some key elements here, and they all tend to work the same way from what I understand, right? So can we run through the first thing here? You get a call, for example, you're at home, and you get a call from someone saying, I'm from the bank, and whatever bank you happen to be with. So right away you're thinking, okay, well, that is my bank. Then they give you some numbers that happen to match account numbers. So that part alone, that's building trust, right? You now believe this person because they have enough information about you to know that.
Yes, definitely. You definitely trust more when some credibility cues are given, and that's what scammers are doing now. They use stolen data that has been breached, that has been pieced together, and so you will have that security that a bank is really who is calling you. And then they'll know a lot about you, and I think that immediately builds a lot of trust and, gives you a peace of mind, because it's not a stranger anymore. It's somebody who actually knows you. So that's why it's kind of really successful. You're immediately in that frame of mind.
So the information they already got, right, which allows them to pretend, they're legit, they got this somewhere on the dark web? This is information that was stolen about you?
I would say that scammers don't really work very hard getting that information anymore, because so much of our data has been breached. And if they have your name, and perhaps they know which bank you're banking with, and, if they give you your date of birth or something like that, you're going to think that it is your bank. A lot of our information has already been breached and used for that sort of purpose.
So that establishes trust or credibility, whatever. You think it's someone legit. And then I know the first thing, we've said this before, but people for whatever reason don't do it. First thing you do, whether it's your bank or your credit card company calling you, seems an unnatural thing to have happen. So the suggestion is what? Hang up?
I mean, that would be a logical suggestion, but a lot of the times when you do get these calls from scammers, they will immediately evoke some kind of panic. They'll tell you your bank account has been compromised, somebody has authorized a large sum of money from your account, and that will bypass that clear thinking. You don't get a moment to, exactly. You'll get scared, and you're just like now in a fight or flight mode, and then they give you these credibility details, and you think, well, you want to deal with it urgently. And even if they're not pressuring you, the whole situation becomes very urgent.
All right. Again, so, as I said off the top, this has been happening for so many, years now. We go through different phases of scams. We had the grandfather scam, right? Someone calling, pretending they're a family member. I think people heard about that. Hopefully that helped. How prevalent are these kinds of scams we're describing now?
I think they're very, very prevalent. I belong to several sort of consumer groups where people discuss these scams, and some people are reporting that they hit between 10 to 30 times a day with different scams. And you have to understand that with AI now and the ability to create agents that send these things en masse, it's pretty easy for scammers. So it costs them very little to just send tons of scams every single day to everybody.
All right. And when I said, we're not getting better at this, I mean, in terms of people getting scammed, we're getting worse. I know the number's in the hundreds of millions, right? And it seems to be going up every year.
Yeah, one thing that I always like to say to people, we are human and we react in a very human way. And that hasn't changed. So our, predisposition to fight or flight when something scares us, to get excited if there's a prize. All of that has stayed very stable, and scammers are still exploiting that. But now the scams are very, very sophisticated. They're highly organized. These are operations that are utilizing AI. It's no longer just badly spelled emails that we get. We get highly targeted things with fake websites. So everything looks real, even if you check. So I just think the scammers are getting way more sophisticated, and that's why we're seeing the increase.
So how should we become more sophisticated to match what they're doing? What's the advice for people, who are in this situation? What do you do?
Yeah, I think, just inform yourself. Every single victim that I've ever interviewed has said, I never thought this would happen to me. So It happens to everybody. Just know it will happen to you in your lifetime, probably. It happened to me. I got scammed on eBay once. So it's just be aware that everybody will be targeted by a scam. And there will be scams that will be more realistic than others. They'll come just at the right time. They'll look very, very real. So just make sure that you know how scammers are manipulating. Beware that scammers will try and evoke some kind of reaction that is very strong, either excitement or fear. And under those situations, it's very difficult to think clearly. So having some rules in place, I always say to people, have rules in place. If something like that happens, if a bank calls and I'm really freaked out because my account is in danger, I'm going to put a phone down and I'm going to call my bank on a number at the back of my card. So you have that rule. You don't have to think in a moment what to do. It's just you're always following a certain rules. Practice, as well, because people, when you're under a visceral influence of fear, it's very difficult to think clearly.
You've kind of piqued my curiosity here, Martina. You said you yourself actually got scammed on eBay. If it's, if you don't mind, you're kind of the go-to person here. How did that happen?
Yeah, I think I was purchasing a phone. It's been some years now, probably over 10 years. I was purchasing a phone and I thought, well, it's eBay, I'm paying by PayPal, and everything was reimbursed to me because the seller didn't send it to me, so they didn't have the proof. But afterwards I was thinking, well, it did seem like, I didn't really check the seller. If I checked the seller, I would have seen that he was selling. They were selling several phones that evening, and I think these are the things. It's so much of our life is routine. You are using these platforms. You're using Facebook. You're using eBay. You're using different things on the internet. You're shopping online,
right?
And I think we forget that scammers are very good at rerouting some of these activities towards them and their fake websites and their activities. And I think that's something that unfortunately we'll probably have for the rest of our lives. Scammers have been around for a long time, using the same persuasion techniques. So just knowing what scams are doing at the moment and how they're operating and how they're evoking panic and these emotional triggers helps to kind of just try and get out of that when you're in that situation.
Yeah, you mentioned one other thing. It's worth pointing out as well. Their plan, I guess, as well, is to keep you on the phone as long as you can, right? They don't want you to hang up and try to get help from anybody else. And that's what they do. They have a method to do this.
Yes. There's and it's a clear method, right? When you are in this, what it's called a visceral influence. These are primal drives such as strong emotions, sexual desire, fear, pain, thirst, hunger. These are a drive where we can't think of anything else but that particular thing that's happening to us. And so if they allow you to put the phone down, you're going to calm down and have a moment to think. So it's really important for them to keep you in that arousal state where you're not able to recall good advice, where you're not able to talk to anyone. And that's what's happening now. I think they've realized that it's a lot more effective when they don't allow you the moment to actually just calm down.
I have to wrap up. I did want to point out one last thing, and it's maybe something we don't think about a lot in these things after you've been scammed, and that's the emotional cost after the fact.
Yes. Yes, there's a lot of just guilt, shame. People lose the confidence in their own decisions, and they don't want to talk to anyone. And I would say, please tell your friends and family. The more you speak about it, the less shame there will be. And I think we need to talk about it. It's a pandemic. It's a scamdemic.
Yeah, the problem with that is, of course, it's so embarrassing, for people to admit that they got scammed, which makes it even harder to talk about, right? Which is part of the problem. True. Yeah. Look, the book is called The Psychology of Fraud, Persuasion and Scam Techniques. The author is Martina Dove. Martina, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Canadian women are looking for more out of themselves, their businesses, their elected leaders, and the world around them.
And that's why we're thrilled to introduce the Honest Talk podcast.
I'm Jennifer Stewart.
And I'm Catherine Clark. And in this podcast, we interview Canada's most inspiring women.
Entrepreneurs, artists, athletes, politicians, and newsmakers, all at different stages of their journey.
So if you're looking to connect, then we hope you'll join us.
Listen to the Honest Talk podcast on iHeartRadio or wherever you listen to your podcasts.